views, opinions, and positions expressed on this radio program are those of the speakers, authors, or other contributors. This broadcast is intended for entertainment purposes only.
Consciousness is an amorphous and expanding entity.
Realize that you are in a cultural hypnosis.
We have been systematically put into a state of unconsciousness so that we cannot see.
I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like
what we are part of and what we are experiencing, though that is changing.
And now, here is your host, Joe Ayala Ayupanya.
Welcome back to another episode of Quintessential Mark Radio 2.0. I am your host, Ayala, and today we're going to be talking about something really fascinating, but it also taps into the world of what the heck is going on. And specifically, straight to the point, I am talking about the Challenger disaster that happened in 1984. Now, for those of you who are potentially within a different timeline, the world, your experience personally, Challenger, the disaster, and what had occurred thereafter happened in 1986. Now, how could this be? For a very long time, I thought that I was nuts. I thought I was crazy. But then when I started to gain more personal experience in life experiences per se, I would have to say that I am not crazy. Just from the things that I have encountered in the past and being educationally and mentally sound, and other people telling me that there is no crazy at all. There are many things, I guess you would have to say truths for the matter, of which I've been putting out there. It makes logical sense. And there is no mental illness per se, which is very good. And this is coming from professionals, nurses, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists. Okay, so I'm in the clear for the most part. But professionally speaking, I do not tell them of what had happened. My own experiences with my own account and how I had experienced the Challenger disaster back in your 1986. In my timeline, it happened in 1984. So for those of you who are listening and have not a single inkling of a clue of what the heck I am talking about, let me explain. This experience actually taps into the world of parallel reality, multiple timelines, the multiverse, many experiences with people and their own doppelgangers, of which I did actually record an episode on that earlier, which was entitled Synchronicity and the Doppelganger. And for what many may have encountered historically in the past, in their own lives and other people's stories too as well, the Mandela effect. Now, the reason why I also make mention of this broadcast, specifically this subject matter, is because Hollywood has also tapped into the world of the multiverse. And the movie production company, corporation in and of itself is Marvel. Okay. There are two distinct movies of whom have essentially gone very deep into the subject matter. And that is Spider-Man, No Way Home, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Oh, and also the third component, the third movie, was where they also tapped into the multiverse, going back in time. And not only that, parallel reality. And that's Avengers Endgame, many years back. Now, usually when Hollywood portrays something, like I've mentioned before, it's as if it's a contract or an offering per se. And as you're watching the movie, many people don't know and don't even realize, just the same as the most recent movie with the Black Panther. The second movie, the latest addition to the Black Panther Marvel movie. And many of the components of that movie, just like in Doctor Strange, the addition or the integration really of witchcraft is also a major portion of that movie. And many people who do not know, who watch movies as such, do not know that they are also part of this movie too as well. Because essentially these, again, like I mentioned earlier, these movies are actually offerings. And if you unknowingly watch it and do not analyze any further into it, besides the fact that it is of entertainment value, then that's where they get you. You must also make mention, if you're going to watch this for entertainment value, also make mention to yourself, be aware that you do not consent to any of the demonic banter that goes along within this movie. And that's the disclaimer when essentially looking into the very bulk of what this episode is all about. Now, the Challenger disaster specifically happened in this timeline as I speak to you on January 28, 1986. That's where the Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart 73 seconds into its flight, apparently killing all 7 crew members aboard. The spacecraft disintegrated 46,000 feet, 14 kilometers above the Atlantic Ocean, off the coast of Cape Canaveral, Florida, at 11:39 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, the thing of the matter, my personal experience, my encounter with the Challenger disaster, for me, it happened in 1984. How do I know this? Because it's been so long. The way that I know this is because when I saw it specifically, it happened in elementary school. This is a very vital piece of information. And this is coming from a producer, a nurse, a veteran, well-educated nurse at that. Okay. No history of being admitted to the hospital. No psychiatric medication. No psychiatric diagnosis. Like I said earlier, the reason why I mentioned what I mentioned earlier was because I wanted to portray to you that I am not crazy. Okay. And this happened in elementary school in the 6th grade. And at that time, I was in a 6th grade setting, elementary school, not middle school, elementary school. And I remember the very hallway where the 5th and 6th grade were. It wasn't in the other hallways where you had lower grades, like 1st, 2nd, 3rd. Okay, then the next hallways would be 3rd or 4th. And then the upper grade hallways would be the 5th and 6th. I was there in the upper grade hallways, but this was where I was in the 6th grade. It was January. There was snow cover on the ground, and the very ground that I saw through the window was actually that room specifically, the science room, where Mr. Watson held his science class. Now, what's Mr. Watson? He's one of my most favorite teachers back in elementary school, specifically in the 6th grade. And I would specifically know certain subject matters of what he talked about because he was so very interesting. And on that day, actually, I'm not sure if it was what day of the week, but he made a big thing about the Challenger launch because there was a teacher. What was her name? McCullough, I believe. So it was Sharon or Krista, I believe it was Krista McCullough, teacher, the first teacher on board within that flight, that launch. And so it was a big thing for him, big thing for teachers, period. And since he was a science teacher, this worked perfectly. And so he wanted to, for us, his students, to witness that live. And again, it was that hallway, 6th grade, and also there was a brick wall to the left, window, and then we were facing the elementary school. The field where there was snow cover, we actually had what we called Flag Day, where we would play different sports and we would get ribbons for first, second, or third. And to the left was where there was the apartment complex there in Northfield. And that's where we lived. And my parents, cousins. And this was in Lee Eaton Elementary School in Northfield. That was my awareness of thinking at that particular point. This timeline, this happened for me in 1984. If it wasn't 86, that would have brought me into middle school, not the 6th grade, not elementary school, but middle school. And my thinking at that time was not in the middle school. I didn't have middle school classmates. I did not have middle school teachers. My mindset was elementary. My mindset was the very last year of elementary school, the 6th grade. But if that was the case, this brings this particular event, the Challenger disaster, back in 1984. If you are to look within Google and within books, and if you were to ask any average person, this event happened in 1986. Now, when I had experienced it and started thinking about it, when I believe it was a show that I was watching, and the main focus was on the Challenger disaster, and it mentioned it happening in 1986. And that's what drew me closer into this phenomenon. And I started researching it more, doing the math, and the math did not add up to 4. This event happened in 1984. So, in my timeline. But as time has gone along, back then, and even I say 10 years ago, there was not many people who would state that it was 1984. But as time progressed, as I started to research it online to see if there were any chat forums, talk forums, if it was on Reddit, and even just recently, I came across many Reddit forums where they talked about the Challenger disaster happening back in 1984. Okay. And this comes to make you think. Okay. And I'm not like focusing on any particular gender issues, but in my timeline, potentially, in my timeline, Caitlyn Jenner, okay, the transgender of this timeline could potentially, in that other timeline in 1984, that timeline, it was just Bruce Jenner. No transgender change for any particular notion. And quite potentially, too, as well, that within this timeline, the 1986 timeline, as we know now as we speak, the lead singer for Journey, the wonderful rock group Journey, in this timeline, it's a Filipino lead singer, right? And his name is Arnel Pineda, but quite potentially in the other timeline, the 1984 timeline, it's Steve Perry. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, I'm just hypothetically being sarcastic here, but could this rarely be the case? Now, I would want you to watch the other episode, the previous episode that I did on the synchronicity and the doppelganger, and my own experiences with this other person who lives in Phoenix. At the time, I was in Cleveland. And guess what? All of a sudden, I became aware that the fact that it moved to Phoenix from Cleveland, my entire focus was not to move to Phoenix, but because there was a job opening, I jumped on it. My focus was to move to northern Arizona, quite potentially Prescott. But my whole thought was not to ever move to Phoenix. It was too hot. But where do I find myself today? I'm in Phoenix, right? So the issue, which essentially has never left my mind, I think about it every day, just the same when I encountered that 13-foot giant. I think about it every day. Is it disturbing? It is not disturbing. It's the fact that it's fascinating. How real is the multiverse? The same multiverse which is portrayed in Spider-Man and Marvel movies, other Marvel movies such as The Avengers and Doctor Strange. Okay. Now, if this essentially feels so very new to you and fascinating and just very interesting material, there is also another thing that's going on here too as well. Okay. Is the fact that the actual crew might still be alive. Now, when you look at some of these people, make comparisons between now and when the disaster happened, the similarities are quite striking. There might be one essentially where there is no clear comparison where you can say, yeah, that's exactly him. No, there are many portions of his face of which it just doesn't seem right. It's two different people, but I could be wrong. Okay. And I believe that individual was Gregory Jarvis, the payload specialist. Let me list the 7 crew members of the Challenger. And the first one is, of course, the commander, Richard Scobie. Now, apparently, he is a CEO of Cows and Trees, his own LC. As to what that is, I'm not really sure. Okay, that's not the focus of this broadcast. And the second crew member is Mission Specialist Judith Resnick, the Yale law professor, today. And for those of you who are just chiming in, when I say today, the people of the Challenger disaster, which happened in my world, 1984, your world, 1986, they apparently have lived on. Moving forward, third crew member, Michael Smith. Fourth crew member, payload specialist, Gregory Jarvis, where there is no similarities in facial characteristic. And then we got Ronald McNair, Ellison Onizuka. Ellison Onizuka, his face looks exactly the same. You can tell in the aging, he might have gained some weight over the years, of course, but it's just very striking. Same thing with Judith Resnick, the Yale law professor of today. Very striking similarities. And then, of course, Krista McCullough, the teacher. So those are your 7 crew members. If anybody has any particular clue as to what is happening here, if you know exactly what I'm talking about a little bit more than I do, please, I would love to have you on the show so we can talk about this. Okay, very fascinating material. How this relates biblically. Could there be a demonic component within all of this? Absolutely. Now, the things that are being done in CERN is quite shocking. It's also disturbing too as well. It's that idea over there in Sweden, where not only do they do scientific experiments, where apparently they had for the God particle there, but they're also doing some very questionable satanic acts, ceremonies, celebrations, which is also quite concerning as far as it relates to the globalists, the World Economic Forum, and many of the connections as it relates to the New World Order. Have you? And so this is essentially a question to be brought to you upon my own hypothesis of what is actually going on. From what is being done in CERN and quantum computing, where they're literally opening gateways, quite possibly timelines could be interrupted here or disrupted, where maybe another universe was created as an extension of ours because of that, as a side effect. Okay. So that's a question for you, not only to be aware of, but to also kind of for you to do your own research too as well. Now, I'm going to go through other accounts of many people who have stated that the Challenger, or not only stated, but proclaimed for themselves as their own testimony that the Challenger disaster happened in 1984 and not 1986. And this is from Reddit forum, the conversation. I'm just going to go through the list here. Okay, just very briefly. This actually comes from Dana Lynn, who's also a nurse. This was a statement that she put out there 5 years ago, another fellow nurse. As she states, I've known about the Mandela effect for over a year now. I've done the research. I've gone through all of the different effects. Some I feel strongly for, some I don't. But the Challenger disaster was in 1984. I've known this as a fact for all my life. I'm 35, so she's 40, just the same age as me today. Well, no, she was 35, so right now she's 40, so not the same age. And I can just further go along. She states, I remember reading an article about it a few years ago, 1984. Today, I am quite shocked to see that it happened in 1986, like a jolt through my reality. Wow, this was a big one for me. Anyone else? And then there's another one by Random Pokemon Hunter, as he goes by. As he states, I have been confused on this one for a while. I can remember being in 5th grade, just as me, the classroom, except I was in the 6th grade. The classroom I was in was a classroom within elementary school, just like I was mentioning. And so this happened indeed in 1984 and in 1986. See what I'm saying? I am not crazy, guys. Other people are actually stating this to be the case. They are describing their actual surroundings. And that's very key. Not in the middle school, but within elementary. Okay, so this is very big. Another one, their handle is not displayed, but she states that it seems like it was around the same time the original Ghostbusters movie came out. And that was 1984. Another personal account, their testimony came from Jaden 52336, as Jaden states, I was in Mr. Kennedy's 5th grade class at Kingsbury Elementary School in Redlands, California at the time of the Challenger explosion. We watched it on TV. I'm 43. That would be put in the year of 1984, within that school year. Okay, another personal account where they talk about their teacher within that class in elementary school. Another one comes from a YouTube fact as bot, as he goes by. The CNN footage of the Challenger disaster made notorious not just for the tragedy of the incident, but also for the extensive coverage paid to what have been there presented from first school teacher in space, Krista McCullough. Okay. And then another personal account from DMAC, 84 was the year where the Challenger happened for me. I remember being home from school and called my mom to tell her about it. I'm 36 years old too. So maybe age has something to do about this whole thing. Okay. So many personal accounts. Another one from Larry Johnson. It was 1984 for me. I remember it vividly. I was a bit of a science geek, and my 4th grade teacher let a few of us out to stay within class over within recess time to watch the actual live presentation of the Challenger launch. When they reported about it blowing up, my teacher started crying. And it was 1984 when this actually happened. Now, I would also have to state too, in addition to my own personal account, when we were watching the Challenger launch, again, 1984, in my timeline, the classroom was very silent. Everybody was so intrigued, especially my science teacher, Mr. Watson. And within a few seconds after the launch, we saw this thing just essentially disintegrate as we saw the Challenger fall apart before it reached orbit. And so everybody was still very excited, but then there was a a feeling of doom. Okay. And that one of the kids within my classroom, one of my classmates mentioned, but was that supposed to happen? And even our science teacher was boggled out of his mind. And then he knew exactly what had happened. We saw this thing live. And you could tell by the anxiety, the nervousness within his banter as he started to approach the TV. Now, this TV was in one of those more popular roly-poly stands where you had the TV on the second level of the stand, and on the first was the VCR. Okay. And so he went straight to the TV, shut it off, disconnected the cord from the wall socket, and rolled it out of the room. And then he proceeded to go in one of the chapters of the science book. Then we essentially went right into our books. And he says, turn to page the chapter this, and then, there was a little bit of a ruckus within the classroom as people were asking, was that supposed to happen? What are we doing? Mr. Watson, we want to see more. And he says, no, we're not going to talk about this right now. Okay. We're going to go into our books. We're going to go into chapter so and such. And we're going to be talking about this. Okay. Nothing else. And he had a very stern voice, and his personality changed. His whole banter changed. His whole effect changed. And that's what made me realize and remember this experience even more. You see what I'm saying? And he knew exactly what had happened. We witnessed the Challenger disaster live in 1984. Thank you so much, dear listener, for tuning in. Just wanted to share that with you. Okay. Send me, please, your thoughts. If you want to give me a quick ring and this resonates with you, give me a call at 216-618-3252. If you would like to email me your thoughts, prayers, or even any other thoughts and prayers from other previous episodes, please email me at truthondemand@realrevolutionradio.com. And if you would like to check out our ministry here at R3 TV Ministries, please visit our website, our official website at r3tvministries.com. If you would like to read one of many of my articles, controversial articles at that, for our blog for the network, please visit our official website for that at walkawayfromthenewage.com. And we have many episodes. This is episode number, I believe, 89. So we're rounding the corner and we're closing in on episode 90 as we are on the path to 100 by the end of this year, 2022. Visit our official website for this broadcast at qmr20.com. Thank you so much, dear listeners, for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Quintessential Mark Radio 2.0. God bless.
Yeshua, I feel your blood dripping on me. No, it flows through me. All roads lead back to AD 33. All these devil highways lead back to AD 33. Split the temples back to AD 33. Take me back to AD 33. Yeah. Real Revolution Radio. Facing down the fallen angels, locking horns with this evil down through the ages, down through the ages. Thorns on the crown, barbs on his crown as we stand under. Jesus looking down, Yeshua gazing down, blood on his brow, pain in his frown, split the temples, died for our sins. Now take that man down, unnail him, lay his body down. We'll shudder the radio waves with revolution blades shine blue. Warn us Luciferians at perimeters. The very air is polluted. Devil's advocates suited and booted. Pinstripe with lies, but we shine in the truth. We have our stripes. We're not fallen angels. The human condition, arsenal to their ammunition. It weakens our position, puts a taint on God's mission. So we gotta reconnect the sleeping minds to the ignition. Facing down the fallen angels, locking horns with this evil down through the ages, down through the ages. Thorns on the crown, barbs on his crown as we stand under. Jesus looking down, Yeshua gazing down, blood on his brow, pain in his frown, split the temples, died for our sins. Now take that man down, unnail him, lay his body down. Unplug you from the matrix, hook you up to source power, reinstate your purpose, no climbing Babel's tower. Gearing you up, anointed truth seekers, take you out the hidden fields, put you in the killing fields. New age Decepticons launching out all assaults on all fronts. God steeple shutters and more fog, demonic realms open up, now you open fire up, defecting from the new age deception. God of the Most High, we walk with old body giants, mobilizing Christian armies, swords made of raw defiance. Old gods in our blood like Christ-barbed soldiers, follow the steps of the giants, the Nephilim order. Our gospel in the battlefield, smash satanic shields, code of honor in our blood, never see us yield. Conscious human beings doing the Almighty's work, channel the forces of light back into this world. Facing down the fallen angels, locking horns with this evil down through the ages, down through the ages. Thorns on the crown, barbs on his crown as we stand under. Jesus looking down, Yeshua gazing down, blood on his brow, pain in his frown, split the temples, died for our sins. Now take that man down, unnail him, lay his body down. I will lay your body down, we will lay your body down. Real Revolution Radio. Yeah. Credit where credit's due. Shout out to our new age defectors, John Ramirez, Stephen Bankars, Doreen Virtue. May God be with you.